Hello and welcome. My name is Biagio Mazza, Pastoral Associate at St. Sabina Parish in Belton, Missouri, and I'm here to welcome you to another Do You Know series question. Today's Do You Know question is, do you know the many Latin American customs and celebrations surrounding Christmas? As we go back to the history of church and its relationship to drama, we know very well for many centuries in Europe and throughout the Christian world, drama and plays were used to really educate people who could not read and write. And as a result, many enactments were used throughout the liturgical year to really address and educate and catechize and even entertain people into the teachings of the church and the lessons and stories from Scripture. And many of these things existed for many centuries in Europe. One example would be, for example, Francis of Assisi in the year 1223 actually recreated the nativity scene in a real barn with animals and so on to engage the people in the story of the birth of Jesus. So when many of the missionaries came to the New World, especially the Franciscan missionaries from Italy and from Spain and Italy and so on, many of these missionaries observed that the native people in the various areas that they were in actually celebrated their devotion to their own gods and goddesses through various ritual dances, plays, music, songs, and so on. And so what they did is they actually noticed this, observed it, and actually began to say this would be an ideal way to educate people about Jesus and the Bible and the Christian teaching. And so what they did is they baptized many of these plays and many of these ways of entertaining by providing enactments of stories from Scripture, from the actual Bible and the life of Jesus that would educate, entertain, and catechize the natives. And so as a result of that, many traditions developed around the various church seasons. Christmas became one of the key feasts that was very rich in many of the traditions that developed, as well as Easter and Holy Week and Easter. But around Christmas, many traditions developed, and two of these traditions were still exist to this very day, are the posadas, las posadas, and las pastorellas. We will devote a separate video to each one of these, but briefly, La Posadas has to do with the difficult journey of Mary and Joseph as they travel from Nazareth to Bethlehem, and the difficulty in finding a lodging, especially as Mary is very advanced in her pregnancy. That's the plot, essentially, of the Las Posadas. Las Pastorellas tells the Christmas story of the birth of Jesus primarily from the shepherd's point of view. And as I say, we'll devote a video to that as we go on. But there are many other traditions that developed around the Christmas season in many Latin American countries. One of the most significant ones has to do with the Christmas story itself and the building of the nativity scene, what they call the nacimiento, which is essentially an elaborate structure of the nativity scene with many other characters, usually people doing their daily activities, like a woman doing her tortillas and so on, as Jesus is being born. As a matter of fact, in many Latin American countries, the nativity scene is much more prevalent and much more important than the Christmas tree. There's also, during the month of December, we had the famous feast of Our Lady of Guadalupe, celebrated throughout much of Latin America. And, on December the 12th, you had the reenactment of the actual story of the appearance of Our Lady of Guadalupe to Juan Diego. You also have at that time the Matachina dancers who use the native customs and native dances to honor Our Lady, and so on. We also have the Novenas, a 9-day preparation for Christmas, usually devoted to, as a result of supposedly the 9 months of Mary's pregnancy in preparation for giving birth to Jesus. 9 days are set aside, devoted primarily to the rosary, in order to prepare for the birth of Jesus at Christmas. The other interesting thing that's celebrated at this time is the piñatas. And the piñatas traditionally are constructed with a 7-pointed star, and the missionaries used the piñata as a teaching lesson too. The pointed stars, the 7 points of the star, were supposed to represent the 7 deadly sins, and the children and adults who battled the piñata, who hit the piñata in order to get what's inside, were actually battling against evil and the deadly sins. And especially when they were blindfolded, this represented the blind faith in which they countered the evil that existed around them. And then eventually, as they continued to battle against sin, the piñata would break, and they were eventually blessed with God's grace and God's blessing in terms of candy and fruit and so on. Even after Christmas, interesting enough, you have the stories of the 3 kings on January the 6th, on which many Latin American countries still use as the day to give gifts, not so much at Christmas, but more on the Feast of the 3 Kings. And they also have a traditional cake which they hide the baby Jesus in, jumping off the story of the Holy Innocents, where Herod was after the baby Jesus to kill him, and he is hidden in the cake. And then those who participate in the story, in the party of the 3 kings, whoever gets the little baby Jesus that's hidden in the cake, that person is responsible for celebrating and holding a feast for all the participants on the Candelaria, as they say, the Feast of Candlemas on February the 2nd, which officially brings closure to the entire season of Christmas in the Latin American tradition. So I hope this has helped to explain just a bit of the many traditions that developed out of the many customs and celebrations that developed out of the missionaries bringing many of these things to the New World. And I hope you will return again to more Do You Know series questions. Thank you very much.